this would be really badass to do. I'm in flight school right now at Brandywine. Most of the dropouts happen in phase 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Big Man's Cabana. I am your host, Matthew J. Lepore, and I am on with a very special guest, and I mean that this week, with one of my best friends of all time, Benjamin DiArcangelo.
How you guys doing?
They're probably doing good.
I hope so.
Well, there's a massive audience, as you can see in the studio here today. But Ben, this is your first time that you've been on the BMC.
It is.
Big Man's
It
Cabana.
is.
Now, have you been on the Stuttering and Silence podcast before?
No, I'm not.
You know, we should change that tonight.
I could be enticed.
Could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Gavin and I usually will record on these days. Not that we're going to say when we do record, but the day that we are recording would be today. But enough about that. Shameless plug. We're going to talk about you. Now, Ben, you are as I say a lot of these podcasts with people like you, connoisseurs of many things. You were a wrestler. You were a football player. One hell of a tennis player.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You talk about that all the time.
And you just got your stripes because you were now an officer in the Army after the ROTC from Villanova University. And in about a month, you're gonna have your wings. You're gonna be a private pilot.
Yeah.
Talk about a connoisseur of so many things. Before this, guys, he said, "Dude, I'm not that interested in this. What are we gonna talk about?" I'm like, "We're talking about you. Like it's about you. You're the guest." And dude, you have so much that you do. So let's kind of see when you've wanted to figure out when you were like, I want to be in the Army. This is something that I wanted to chase.
Yeah. So I always came from a military background, military family, as you know. Both my parents were in the Air Force. My dad was a meteorologist in the Air Force. He was stationed at the Pentagon for a little while, Andrews Air Force Base. My mom was with him as well. She was a nurse. And so growing up, I always kind of had that background. And, they never pushed me to do anything in any sort of way. But I really just wanted to do something different and do something really cool that I thought was cool. You see all the TV shows and, you think that, this would be really badass to do.
Yeah.
So honestly, it really started around 6th, 7th grade. Like I'd always talked about when I was a little kid, like, I really want to be in the Army. I really want to do these types of things. And so I started following through with it. And out of high school, got a scholarship from the Army and went right into ROTC at Villanova. Now, Villanova wasn't my first choice, though. For a long time, I wanted to go to either a service academy or I wanted to go to Texas A&M and be a part of the Corps of Cadets.
I remember that, yes. Yeah.
But it kind of changed a little bit just based on I wanted more of a normal college experience. And so it really led me to choosing someplace close to home, which I'm really happy I did.
Yeah. I like you're by all of us.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, you were a sophomore now at Villanova doing RTC. Walk me through that year. What did it look like?
Yeah, so sophomore year, you definitely start to know a lot more, right? You're moving up a little bit, and you know what's going on. But what's not really nice about sophomore year is that you don't really have any real responsibilities.
Yeah.
So you know everything that's going on. You're finally ingrained. You know what's happening. But life's pretty easy, right? You don't have a ton of responsibilities.
Yeah.
You're not in charge of a ton of people.
Yeah.
So overall, sophomore year is a pretty easy year. And it really, once you get to junior year, like that's when things start to really pick up and you feel and understand a lot more what it's like being in the Army.
Sure. Okay. So how did that feel then? Like, did you feel like you were always like chasing like the 8 ball? Were you always behind it, or were you just kind of like just trucking along?
Yeah, it felt more, you're just kind of chugging along. You don't really start to realize or see the big picture, right? The Army's a huge organization.
Yeah.
It's something that, like, even when I'm trying to explain the Army to other people or what I do right now, it can be kind of tough sometimes because it's just a huge organization that people don't understand really that well or that in depth. So even as a student learning about the Army, being in ROTC, as a freshman and sophomore, don't expect to be knowing everything, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna feel like you're kind of in the dark on a lot of things.
Now, how did that feel?
That was it was almost like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, intimidating or anything. You're surrounded in the bubble that you know, and it really isn't until you get to that next step where you like this whole layer's unveiled, and you start to realize things that you never even knew about, so to speak.
Yeah. So you're now a sophomore. So did you have upperclassmen kind of giving you some flack, or were they very helpful? Were they trying to truck you along and point you in the right direction?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Definitely my freshman year. I mean, seniors you did not talk to unless you were spoken to. Right, they're about to be officers. It was a very class system, top down, don't speak unless you're spoken to kind of a thing. And then sophomore year, definitely you start to see more of that mentorship role from a lot of guys. You definitely start to be more ingrained in that kind of community and getting help from upperclassmen and understanding things.
Okay. So now you're now finishing your sophomore year. You're starting to unravel that onion. You're getting to the next layer.
Yeah.
And you're going to be walking into the summer. How did that feel kind of prepping for that junior year?
So that was when COVID hit too.
Yeah.
And so prepping for that junior year was a lot of uncertainties around it. So I was supposed to go to a school called Aerosol, right? My sophomore year, I was selected to go to Aerosol school. And so I was supposed to be going to Aerosol school in that summer of 2020.
Okay.
But obviously COVID hit and nobody knew what was really going on, right? Everything in the Army just kept getting delayed and delayed. So that summer, we really didn't know what was going on too much.
Yeah. So how was that then? Like, did you guys have different protocols now with the Army, even when you were in school? Or was it just kind of like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, were things just different for you guys because you were in the Army or in the ROTC? Or was it just, or was it more strict?
I get what you're kind of saying. Protocols initially, they weren't as strict. It was more everyone just kind of trying to figure out what the protocols really were.
Yeah.
Because getting back to school was an issue because even though we're part of in a government organization, the schools ultimately determine what we can do on their property and what we can't do. So our battalion, right, was Villanova, Westchester, and Widener. So it really depended heavily on what each of those schools said. So, for example, we start in the fall of 2020, and Westchester University, you couldn't be on their campus. Like, they wouldn't allow us to do our regular train exercises. That's where we would go every week to do those things. So we had to go off-site to a National Guard post in order to do our training that we needed to do every week. So it was a lot of figuring out things on the fly and just kind of putting things together, putting pieces where we could and fitting training in where we could and doing our best to follow what the government said because it was really top down.
Was that difficult for you guys then?
Definitely. Yeah, it sucked a lot.
Yeah. I'm sure not a lot of you guys didn't like that either. So now, when did you officially go to Aerosol school?
So I ended up being able to go in December of 2020.
Okay.
There's a slot that opened up, and they started the school back up. There's after COVID, and
so real quick for those people that are out there, what is Aerosol school?
So Aerosol school is quote unquote known as the 10 hardest days in the Army. It's a training program that you go to if you're selected to go to try to earn your wings. And what you learn there is everything to like the Army is really our aviation sector is dealing with helicopters, right? So we fly all the Blackhawks, Chinooks, Apaches, those types of aircraft. So when we're there, you learn how to everything about the aircrafts. You learn all about them. You learn how to tie sling loads to them. So aircraft picking up Humvees, aircraft picking up water tanks, and anything that if you were in a deployed situation, if you need something transported from one base to another, right, this might how you would do it. As well as the last part of it is learning how to rappel and jump out of these helicopters. And that's for like tactical insertion situations where guys might rappel into a forward operating area as an air assault operation.
Okay. So now, with the 10 hardest days, you're now a junior or going into your junior?
A junior year.
So your junior year. You're 3 years into this. You've kicked butt with all the other stuff you've had going on, and now you're in the quote-unquote 10 hardest days. So walk me through that. What was it like when you first got there? What was it like with all like the studying? And I remember you told me all these stories, and I want the people to live like what I got to hear, because me being a civilian, it's wild.
Yeah,
it's wild. So walk me through those 10 days, or whatever you're allowed to talk about.
Yeah. No. So those 10 days, you get down. So I did my training in Fort Campbell. So there's a couple different locations in the United States that they offer air assault school. But so we get there, and especially because there's still a lot of COVID protocols going on. So we had like 3 full days of in-processing where I got to the base and we're not doing anything. We don't know what's going on. We don't really have a lot of information. And then on the 3rd day of this in-processing, which really just meant we were just hanging out like in our rooms.
Yeah.
And so they call them the Black Hats. So that's your air assault sergeants. So they came to where all of us were staying and kind of gave us the laydown of what was happening. So day 0, that was going to be the next day. Bus was going to pick us up to take us to the air assault school at 03. And then we were going to go from there. We didn't really have any more information other than that. So, that was all we were going on.
Oh, it's 3 in the. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut you off.
So next day we wake up. It's early in the morning, and we get to the school grounds.
Okay.
And we get in this huge formation. It's pitch black out. We don't know what's going on. And if you have a phone, right, they marched us to like this big, I don't know what you call it, on the ships, like the crates.
Okay.
It's like a big shipping container.
Okay.
And so we had to put all of our phones in there. You're not allowed to have phones on school property.
I remember this.
Yes. So we're standing outside the school grounds, and when we're all in this big formation, we're just waiting for our names to be called with our roster number, and then we're supposed to run up, go see the medic, and get in formation. So my name's finally called. I run up there. I get into my platoon where they tell me to go inside the school grounds. And immediately, first thing is, the air assault sergeant tells our entire platoon, like, drop all your shit, your rucksacks, everything, get it all out. We're doing it because you have a gear inspection, the first thing.
Yeah.
So they inspect your gear, make sure you have everything that's on your packing list. Because if you're missing one item, you're gone. Like,
I remember you were telling me that.
You're out of the school.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And that happened.
It happened. Yeah, plenty of people. I mean, so air assault, to give you a reference point, has about a 50% pass rate. So about 50% people drop out or are kicked out, so to speak. So then that day 0, after that, we immediately have a 2-mile run that's timed. So we go on our 2-mile run time. If you don't make the time hack, then you're out.
What was the time?
Time, I believe, was 18 minutes. Nothing too hard.
Okay.
Super easy.
Yeah. Did that in 12 the other day.
So get done your run, and then you have to go to the next phase, which is the obstacle course. So the obstacle course has 9 events, 2 of them considered major events and 7 of them considered minor events. So you have to pass both major events or you're kicked out, and then you have to pass you can only fail 1 of the minor events. But before that, they smoke you for an hour.
Nice.
Making you do, push-ups. So they really just tire your body out before you do that. So you go through, do your obstacle course, and then after that, you really get into your studies for that day, right? So that weeds out a lot of people, because once you pass the O course, then you're sent back to the formation area, and all of the people that failed the obstacle course, they made them put their yellow PT belts around themselves so they can identify themselves as no-goes. And so then they had to do the walk back of shame and get out processed from there. Oh. But then we go into that first phase, and you start doing your studies. and start learning. So you go through those first 3 days, and then you have tests, right? So after those first 3 days, and in between all those days you're learning about, you're doing a ton of classroom time, and you can be inspected on really anything at any time. And then that third day, then you're tested, and so you have to wait and see if you pass the test or not, because if you don't pass, then you're a no-go and you're out, obviously.
So what was it like studying? I don't want to stop you, but
Yeah.
What was it like getting smoked, then doing this obstacle course? Your body is exhausted, and now your body's recovering, but now your brain's working overtime. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was all just a blur, because you're just on autopilot at that point.
Okay.
You're like, because it's something that's like really cool for a cadet to get to do. I mean, because we're ingrained into this with all the people that are active in the Army. We're in this program. We're with people that are captains, lieutenants, officers, other people that are NCOs in the Army. So you're really in that community. So especially as a cadet, man, my brain was just on autopilot. It was just like, do the next task, do the next task, pass this, right? You can't fail anything, so to speak.
Yeah. And you were one of how many from Villanova?
So in that class, I was the only person in my battalion sent to air assault school.
I mean, I know, but I thought it was pretty cool to get out there, for it. So you're on day what at this point when you're starting to study?
So you have day 0, and then day 1, 2, and 3. Those are all like classroom time, studying a bunch, and then the morning of day 4 is when you test.
Okay.
When you take your first phase.
So
because it's broken up to 3 phases.
So how nervous were you taking that first test?
Oh, I honestly wasn't that nervous, mainly because I don't think I've ever studied for something as much as like a simple like 50-question test as I had in my life. Like I never was a big studier in high school. Didn't really try that much in college, to tell you the truth. But I mean, me and my roommate, we would just pound each other with questions.
Yeah. So what was the margin of error for that test?
70%. So not too bad, but still something that like it's information that you've only consumed over the past 3 days.
Oh my God. It's terrifying. So there was 2 tests, right? I believe, right? Or there was just 1 test?
Yeah, so they have tests at the end of phase 1.
Okay, so now you're in phase 2.
So phase 2 is another 3 days. And so this is like the hardest phase of air assault school, because you're learning all about these sling loads. So you're learning how a Humvee can be safely attached to different types of helicopters, different helicopters' payloads. And you're learning the configuration of how all of these loads, whether they be water tanks or fuel blivets, Humvees, are attached to there. And we're trying to identify a configuration and see if there's any deficiencies in these configurations. So it's really hands-on, outside. You're in the motor pool working a ton on these types of things.
Oh, my God. So the phase 2 is 3 days. Did you feel like it was a lot to learn in 3 days?
This phase, for sure. Like, this phase was by far, it was information overload all the time. Like, you were just I came with a fresh notebook there, like, about yay big, and it was filled by the time I got done. Like, completely filled.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Do you still have that notebook?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Send me a picture of it so I can put it up for the thing. That'd be sick. So phase 2 is ending. You're hammering away at it all night. How nervous were you for that test?
There's a written test, and then there's a practical test.
Okay, right.
Practical test, I was terrified, because there's 6 major configurations that we have to be able to identify and correct deficiencies. And you're tested on 4 of them, but you don't know which ones you're going to be tested on.
Okay.
So test morning comes around. We take the test, and you find out if you pass the written test first before you move on to your practical test. Then you move on to your practical test, and you're just in a line of people, right? You got to keep your head down, right? Because you can't look ahead of you, see what other people are doing, and you're able to you stand in front of whatever the fuel blivets or whatever it is you're trying to inspect. And the air assault sergeant has a timer. He says, "Are you ready?" Cool. And then he says, "Go." And you have 2 minutes to get around these things and figure out 3 out of 4 possible deficiencies on the configurations. So you're running around. I mean, like a Humvee is huge, right? So we've been practicing for days and days, and you have to go and check everything about how it's configured inside the Humvee, outside, and move around, make your whole way around in 2 minutes. And whenever you find a deficiency, you have to point a knife hand at it, and you just say deficiency, and you don't know whether that answer is correct or not. You don't know. So you only get 6 answers. You get 6 answers, and after you give 6 answers, then no matter what, you're done. And it's not until you've either gotten all the deficiencies or you've used 6 answers or the time is up that you know whether you've passed or not. So that exactly.
So you're just running around a Humvee and BDUs.
So you're just running around and going through your normal routine of how you inspect this thing really quickly, pointing at something and keep going, keep moving on, and you don't know whether or not that's a deficiency and whether or not you're passing or doing well.
Oh my God.
So
I'm nervous.
yeah.
Oh my God. So you got through that, right? Mm-hmm. That's phase 3 or phase 2?
That's phase 2, yep.
So now you're in phase 3.
Now we're in phase 3. And so by the time you get to phase 3, so most of the dropouts happen in phase 2, most of the people that get dropped from the program. And then phase 3 hits, which is the fun phase. That's the phase where
you're jumping out.
Yeah, you get to deal with, rappelling and rappelling out of these helicopters.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in phase 3. You're excited. What did this look like?
Yeah, so day 1, so we tie what's called a Swiss seat around us. So it's just a long piece of rope, and you have to tie it around yourself in such a way that it makes a harness for you.
Okay.
And so this is what is going to support your weight. And so you start off by tying these Swiss seats, and you have these different rappel towers. So these really big towers with one of each side has a wall on it, and then the other side is open. So there's no wall. It's just an open hanging from the top of the tower. And so you learn how to go down the wall side, and you learn how to go down the open side and do different types of that. So you clip into your Swiss seat, the harness that you made for yourself, and you go down and learn how to rappel so you can do it competently. Yeah.
So now you jumped out of a Chinook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that fact? It was
Chinook burns 527 gallons of fuel per hour.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
The Army needs a lot of money to operate.
Yeah. So you're up there, and how long were you guys in the air for?
Well, they take you up in classes.
Okay.
So they'll take 10 air assault students up at a time, and then they'll go up from the airfield that you're on. They'll hover, send the ropes down, and then you'll rappel down from the helicopter. So now you're up there. You're looking down. You're like, that is not a pad down there. That is ground. That is rock hard earth. Yeah. So I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I live for. I love thrill seeking, things like that. But the only thing that in my mind that was going through that I was like, wow, this is like, 2 things were going through my mind. So because when you're waiting your turn to get up there, you're watching as other soldiers are going up there, and the really dumb ones, we call it turtling. So what happens is they jump, they ease themselves off the edge of the aircraft, and then when they go to rappel and they jump, a lot of them get scared. So your back hand is your brake hand. So if you extend it out, right, that means you're falling and you're going down. But if you put it up against your back, that means you just stop on a dime. So these people would jump and then they get scared. So naturally they would react by pulling their brake hand back up to the small of their back. And then because they're on a rope that's hanging from this helicopter, and so then they would just flip underneath, and they'd hit their head on the underneath of the aircraft. So we would be watching that. We'd be like, you just don't want to be that guy. You don't want to turtle. So to
How
speak.
much did that happen?
Happened more than you think.
Really, I can imagine.
Happened more than you think.
I remember when you told me that, I was like, I never thought about that. It was like a possibility until then. I'm like, oh, I guess if you are rappelling and you stop like that, you're gonna swing.
Yeah.
So you jump out. How much did it first try? You got it?
Oh yeah. I mean, and you flow all the way down, and the only thing that I kept thinking though, so that was the one thing, and then the second thing I was thinking was, it's just wild how your harness is just a piece of rope that you tied to your body. And I was like, even today, I still think that's kind of crazy that you can tie a rope to your body, and it's like, that's your lifeline.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And so you get down, you rappel.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you feel?
Oh, that's great. I mean, that was the second last day. The next day was day 10. That was graduation day.
That's phase 4.
Phase 4, yeah. Okay. Technically, it's whatever. So. Yeah, I mean, great. It was an awesome feeling. I mean, it was cold as shit, though. I mean, because the wind is just picking up because the helicopter's going around, and it's the middle of December, and it's cold as shit. We're freezing. So it was a good feeling because you could just finally relax and hang out.
So I remember picking you up from the airport that day, dude. That had to be a nice feeling, just being home, putting your boots back into the house, and just being like, it's done.
Oh yeah, it was great. I mean, because then you're moving into Christmas time, so it was nice. So I had a really nice long break afterwards, but it was definitely a whole different world. Because when you're at a specialty school like that, really your brain is only focused on one thing, right? Because in normal life, you got paying bills or going to your job, or family, friends, social life. You got all these different things to worry about in your day-to-day life. But when you're there, the only thing that you have to focus on is aerosol. Yeah. Right? That's the only thing you have to focus on.
Now, was there a lot of pressure from Villanova for you being the only one?
Well, I mean, there's just a lot of pressure going as a cadet to begin with, because you only get one shot.
Because you don't want to ruin it for the other cadets too, that could be coming in.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you really only get one shot at it. And as well as air assault slots and school slots like airborne, air assault, mountain warfare, those slots are given to us by our brigade down to the battalion, and they're dispersed. And so if you have cadets in the program that pass these schools, your schools are more likely to get those slots in the future. So you don't want to ruin it for people that are going to be behind you that want to get one of these slots, because if you fail, then you're less likely to get those slots for your school.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so I mean, every day I had my master sergeant checking in on me from Villanova, and I just quick phone call, texting me, how you doing, constantly checking in.
Good, that's good. It probably felt good too.
Yeah,
you felt special.
Yeah, because otherwise, getting sent home, it's all of a sudden you're in air assault school, and then you fail something,
you're
done, and they get you a flight home.
That's wild. That because you were telling me people were just dropping out left and right, just for the bag checks. Yeah, they forget a battery from their flashlight.
Yeah. So because after on the graduation day that morning, you have a 12-mile ruck that you have to do in under 3 hours, and the very last thing you have to do before graduating is you have a final gear layout to see what you had in your ruck. So you have a gear list, and there was a couple guys. Somebody was missing one battery. You're supposed to have 3 of them. He had 2 of them. And then somebody accidentally packed 2 OCP tops instead of one bottom and one top, and they get kicked out because of that. Because the whole point of the course is attention to detail. I mean, that's really the whole point. It's teaching you discipline and extreme attention to detail.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine going through 10 days of just hell. Your brain, your body, everything is just broken down, and then it's there's one battery. You're supposed to have 3.
Yeah.
But it's have 2, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I left it wherever.
Yeah.
That would suck.
And then you're done.
That's it.
Yeah. You don't graduate. So, but honestly, if you're competent and responsible, you can pass it and get through.
Yeah.
That's really the idea of it. It's not rocket science. It's just being responsible.
Good. Well, you're done that now. So now you're going into your senior year.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're kind of in charge of your battalion. You're protruding excellence, as they say.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Protruding excellence.
Whatever.
What was that like now? Now you're the top dog.
Yeah, I mean, being a senior is definitely nice because you get a lot of benefits, right? You don't have to do as much in terms of your hands-on work. You have to do a lot of planning though, so it's a lot more like being an officer. So to tell you the truth, a lot of the stuff that you would do as an enlisted person in ROTC, the equivalent, is it's a lot more fun. You're a lot more hands-on. But once you move up to being a senior, then you're in charge of things. You got to plan events. You have to, make briefings, and you have to make PowerPoint slides. In the Army, they always say it's death by PowerPoint. You just get killed by it. So there's a give and take with that. But it's definitely nice because you can see the end. You can see what you've been working for so long.
Yeah. So now you're walking up. You're pretty much done. Everything that you've worked for to this point is now that big picture. There's one last final puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Right. What was that last puzzle piece for you? What was that last thing that you did that was like, this is it. This is the last thing I need to do to get my stripe.
Last thing I had to do.
Like what did you do that you like closed your laptop and you went?
No, that was after I finished my last final. And it's funny because I was just at home when I finished my final, and I closed my laptop, and I was like, "That's it. I've done everything." It was just like I was sitting in my room, and I was just like, "That's it. I'm done."
And that was funny because I remember like peak COVID, a lot of guys like Stephen Rice and all them, and I would see in their Snapchats or whatever, because I just finished college in my house. I never thought that would happen, but so that was it. You finished your final, hand it in, close your laptop, crack a beer. That's it.
Maybe more than one or two.
Absolutely not.
Never.
So that was that was a cool thing that I got to experience. Thank you for inviting me for that. Your commissioning.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was nice. You got to go up, bend your cancel. You got to, and I loved how it was Papa who you gave your coin to, right?
Yeah. So when you commission, you have a first salute, and my first salute is my grandfather because he was a prior enlist in the Air Force. He fought in Vietnam, and so he gave me my first salute. Nice. It was cool. It was a cool experience.
That's awesome. So now you're all good to go. You're an officer. You're finished up, and you seem to take a different path now.
Yeah. So
and this is pretty cool. Not to cut you off, but I'm just this is pretty cool because I remember years ago, you and I both. Now obviously we've taken different paths on that as well. Yours more impressive than mine, but we used to be in Civil Air Patrol. We used to go up on like little orienteering flights and things like that and learn about stuff. But now you've taken it completely full circle. So I'll let you take that away.
Yeah. So after COVID hit, it started to change a lot of things in the Army. And for me, the best way I can describe it would be a lot of cultural changes, because the Army is an interesting organization from the standpoint. Everybody always tells you that the people up top, the people in charge of federal government, they don't really impact you in your day-to-day life. And that's true for most people.
Yeah.
But the thing with the military is you see direct impacts from policy changes immediately, because there's no legislation process that it goes through, or you see direct impacts. And so it was that, and pairing with COVID, a lot of things have changed within the Army. Yeah. And I can't really elaborate on too many things, but a lot of cultural shifts. And there's a reason right now why we've actually seen some of the most numbers of people leave the military in the past 2 years. We're way under recruiting numbers right now on both the officer side and the enlisted side. And I'm not going to really delve in too much to the reasons. I'm going to kind of leave that up to you guys to interpret. But there's reasons why a lot of that's been going on. And so with that, I thought to myself, I'd always wanted to go active duty. I wanted it to be my every single day job. But I kind of changed my mind about that. I didn't want it to be my everyday job. And it was a hard decision to come to.
Because you've been working on this for a while.
Correct. So I decided to instead commission as an officer into the National Guard. And So instead of serving 4 active duty years, I'm required to serve 8 years now in the National Guard. And instead, I can have a civilian career now. So that was when I decided that I wanted to go into flight training and try to become a commercial pilot for an airliner.
Following in your parents'
Yeah,
footsteps.
well,
both in the air. Well, they were both in the Air
both
Force.
Air Force, yeah. So
Just interesting. You all have wings.
somewhat. So that was when I kind of made that shift from Army's gonna be an everyday job to I want to fly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of when all of that happened, and it was a big change to make, and it was a big commitment to make because I was in my mind, this is what I'd want to do for 8 years now.
Yeah. So now you've chosen to take flight.
Yeah.
Right. No more Captain Patsky. What was it?
Patsky, yeah,
Patsky?
something like that.
Yeah, from years ago. But so you're at Brandywine, right? That's your flying.
Yeah.
route?
So I'm flying. I'm in flight school right now at Brandywine. Get my
Okay.
private license.
So pretend I don't know nothing about this. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
How has it been so far?
It's been awesome. I mean, flying is one of the coolest things I've ever done. I mean, I've talked your ear off about that enough, but flying, it's really intricate, but it's nice because I'm able to do it every single day, so I'm able to learn really quickly. And you kind of, I mean, when you first start out, within your first like flight or two, like you're flying the plane, like it's your plane. I mean, my first lesson, like my instructor would be like, take the controls, and you're flying. Then he'd be yelling at me like, don't turn, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just learning trial by fire, right?
Which is usually a good thing for people too. Yeah.
So, I'm about 30 flight hours in right now. My goal here is to hopefully have my license by the end of May, and then I can move on to flight school after that to get my commercial license and my certified flight instructor license. So it's a long process to get there, but I've really been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough like that I was able to get a scholarship from the Army to help pay for my education, and that's allowed me to be able to pursue this career.
Jeez. So now you've been flying for almost a month now, right?
About 2 months, yeah.
Okay, 2 months. You're gonna be done in a month.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, not done, but I have a license. Yeah,
I got it mixed up. So 2 months of flying.
Mm-hmm.
And what plane are you flying? You flying like a Cessna?
Yeah, so it's called it's a little Piper Arrow. That's what
Okay.
that's what they're called. Not Piper, sorry, Piper Warrior.
Okay.
So the only really big difference in the aircraft is that the Cessna's planes are on top, so that you open the doors from the ground, and on these the planes are below your doors, so you just hop on the wing and then climb into the plane. Yeah.
Oh, that's sick.
So.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll take you on a ride.
Well, listen, when you're done, I'd love to go up. I'm the captain now. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. But so now that you're kind of nearing the end of this, how worth it do you think it's been?
I mean, I've always been a big believer in that, like, no matter what you decide to do, it's gonna be a good decision.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's gonna work out because if you put your mind to something, right? I'm sure if I went active duty, that I still would have had a really rewarding career.
Yeah.
But I just decided to do something else, and so far I'm really, really loving it. And I think that as long as you engulf yourself in something, as long as you really commit to it and follow through, I think a lot of people can find enjoyment in what they do.
Yeah.
People are always so worried about making the wrong decision, so to speak, but it's not necessarily a wrong decision. It's just a decision that's going to change how your life looks, and you can try to influence that however much you want, but at the end of the day, most people, I would say, as long as you are actively pursuing something and goals, you're going to like what you're doing.
That's good. That's
you're
actually
going to enjoy your life.
That's a really positive message because a lot of people, especially our age now, are just like, I don't know if I should do this. I'm freaking out.
Yeah, people are always worried about making the wrong decision, but the worst decision you can make is to not make a decision.
That's apathy. Yeah. So, what are some of the craziest maneuvers you've done so far?
I don't get to do that crazy stuff, but
didn't you say you had a blast air into the engine too?
Well, so one of the fun things that you can really do, it's really fun. when you simulate, if your engine catches on fire, what you do, right, you cut your throttle, you cut your mixture, and you start a spiral downward to try to get more air into the engine to blow it out. So you simulate it, you cut your engine, everything like that, and then you start a downward spiral to try to blow it out. So you're like you're staring at the ground, and you're spiraling, and it's like, you're in a controlled spiral, so you know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm with an instructor, so it's nothing too dangerous, but it's just fun to be able to manipulate the airplane in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. So aside from that, have you done any like other kind of crazy things that you never thought you'd do in a plane, or have you just been, because you were telling me about what was that S pattern you took? We were looking on your or you had to find a point. Let's say it was like that mansion or whatever it was, and you had to do it.
Yeah. So just a couple of different maneuvers that you do, and especially when you're starting out, is trying to make like a perfect circle by turning on a point, right? So you pick out a point on the ground reference maneuvers, and you try to get your plane to do a perfect 360. And so the whole idea of it is you really have to adjust the winds, because when you're on a certain part of your circle and the wind is blowing you away or either towards your object, right, you have to adjust your plane so that you don't get blown closer or further away. So it's the whole idea about having control of your aircraft.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of it is like learning about winds and how that affects your plane in flight, and really though, landing's just cool in general, because it's really hard to land a plane. I was actually shocked, so it was really funny, especially when I was like struggling with my landings early on. I got an article sent to me from Barstool, and it was like, shocking number of fully grown adults, males, think that they could land a plane with zero experience. And so it was something like 20% of men think that they could land a plane with zero piloting experience. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. You'd die. You would all die. Like, everybody would die.
I know I would.
Like,
isn't that messed up where it's like, I think I could do it, but I also know in the same sentence that I will die when I do it?
Yeah.
It's just
like,
an ego thing. It's really all it is.
You got an ego. Yeah.
But no, I commend you for actually doing it. So tell me what it was like to land for the first time by yourself.
Well, I haven't...
or not by yourself, but I mean with the instructor with you.
Yeah, I mean, when you butter a landing and you just hear the wheels squeak against the runway, those back wheels, and your nose comes down slowly, it's such a good feeling. Nice. It's better than sex, dude, I'm telling you.
Really?
Yeah, easily. But it's just cool to think that, like, even now at this point that I'm at right now, like, when I'm up with my instructor, like, he's just telling me what to do. Like, I'm doing all the things he tells me to do.
Yeah. And
he's just there in case I fuck something up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And you haven't fucked up yet.
Yeah, let's go.
Good, you king. But no, it really is cool, because a lot of people always kind of dream of doing something like that. And you've done a lot of cool things. You ROTC, you were leading a battalion, you were killing it in ROTC, and really just like being an actual leader. Someone who people look up to. And then you do something like air assault, and you crush it. 50% success rate, and you did it. And people at Villanova were like, oh, this is awesome. Like, you get to hand it out to the next cadet. And you graduate, get your stripe. Everyone's always really proud of you. And you're now attacking something that is massive.
Yeah.
You were literally flying in the air.
Yeah.
And not many people get to do that, you know? Yeah. I know we have one buddy like Nico Palumbo who did it early on too. But
yeah, and he's helped me out actually a ton. Him and I, he spoke to me on the phone, and he's put me in the right direction, because when you're trying to get into any type of industry, like that's the best thing you can do, is find somebody else there that you can just talk to, have a conversation with, and like try to find somebody that's around the same point that you are, in terms of like he's early on in his career, so I want to talk to somebody who's early on in their career. Yeah,
it works out too. He really is a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
So that's a good reference point too. So what's now the timeline now?
Yeah, so I'm looking to go to flight school here in a couple of months. So I'm not really sure where that's going to be right now. Still trying to kind of figure that out. But that flight school was going to be about 5 months long to get my commercial ratings, all that kind of stuff. Then after that, I have to go to IBOLIC, which is my infantry basic officer training course. And that's essentially there you learn how to be an infantry officer, right? Okay. So right now I'm I'm an officer. I'm a second lieutenant in the 109th Infantry, up in Honesdale, PA.
Okay.
And so then I'll have to go to Bullock
Yeah.
at Fort Benning, Georgia. So I'll be there for about 6 months ish. And once I'm finished up with that, then I can start flying for hire and work as a flight instructor to build my hours towards getting to the airlines.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So we could be seeing you at American Airlines just flying by?
Maybe
Like 10, 12 years?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little shorter than that.
You think so?
I want to start making money.
Look at
you.
I'm
just saying.
Oh, man, that's so cool. I'm just excited to get like a text, be like, yo, Matt, you better Belize it. And you're just chilling in Belize.
No, what I really want to do, I just want to be able to text you and be like, yo, by the way, I'm flying to your place right now. You'll be living in Texas or something. And,
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there in like 2 hours.
All right. Well, because your dad used to do that because he was a meteorologist.
Because after the Air Force, he worked for Delta for a little while, and so before 9/11, you still get free flights and everything like that, even if you're just an employee. And so, like, he'd hop on a plane to Boston, go see his parents just randomly for a weekend or something like that.
That was cool. Oh man, you have a lot of freedom now.
Yeah.
So, do you definitely think it's worth it for it all? But now, I've asked this question to a lot of people that have been on, like fitness influencers, cooks, just a bunch of different people for different backgrounds, even someone like Stephanie Grace or Polychromatics. Well, I'll ask you two questions because it's kind of like a two situation thing. So, someone who's walking into ROTC, they've decided this is what they want to do, not even just at Villanova.
Yeah.
What would you say to them as like a senior in high school and they're about to walk in there? What's something what one piece of advice you would give them?
Number one, it's a great way to pay for school.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if you don't have a scholarship out of high school, if you do ROTC at school, like, you're at least, if you're just a good kid, you're at least going to get 2 years of your schooling paid for.
Yeah, nice.
And that's huge, right? People always complain about how there's no way to pay for college anymore. It's too expensive. And yeah, it's really expensive, but find your way to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So, if being in the Army is something that you think you could do and it can really set you up for a great career, and that's a great way to pay for school, right?
Yeah.
Get your degree and everything. But one thing I would definitely tell people that if they know that they want to go do ROTC is that when you get in there as a freshman, just respect people that are over you, right? Understand the chain of command, right? Just have that respect for everybody else. Keep your head down, and
Just work.
Yeah, that's all you really can do. Because what you're gonna find is you're gonna get some of the greatest groups of friends out of your class, right?
Should I kill you, Nick?
Because you're working nonstop with them, like for 4 years, like you're with your class, you're in it together, and so some really cool friendships come out of that and really cool bonds. So
man, that's awesome.
I would definitely say those would be my two things, right? Just keep your head down, work hard, and embrace those other people that you work with, right? Even if you don't think you initially get along with them, because you're gonna have to get along with them, and it'll really benefit you in the future.
That's a good lesson right there. Is you might not get along at first, but you have to.
Yeah.
So make it work.
Exactly. I mean, and because we oftentimes make assumptions of people right away.
Assumptions make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, and that we immediately write somebody off. So it's a really important thing to understand that everybody's just a different type of personality, and everyone's got something going on. Everything's got something cool in their life going on, and so to understand that, maybe they just don't express it in the same way that you do, right?
Yeah.
But that, especially if you're going to be on a team together, get to know them, work with them, because I bet you they're way cooler than you actually think they are.
It's actually a really big, what are they saying, nugget.
Nugget, yeah.
It's a nugget. So, switching gears there, what would you say to someone who is in your position now, almost done, you're like a month or so out, or more or less, for getting your pilot's license? What would you tell someone that's like thinking about doing this?
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive. It is. But, I mean, with the way the airlines are right now, like, it's really rewarding later on down the road. Like, lifestyle. I'd say look into, like, what the kind of lifestyle is going to be like, those types of things. But if you're just somebody looking to get your private license kind of starting out, one thing I would definitely say is fly as much as you can.
Yeah.
Right? Do it every day.
Yeah.
Get your license as fast as you can, especially if you want to go on the airline track. This is what's been told to me by a ton of people, because it just reinforces your learning so much more, and you're not delaying it because then it'll just end up costing you more money in the end.
Yeah.
Right. So like even if you got to work a ton, right, try to fly as much as you can.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Ben, anything else you want to add, my friend?
I mean, I appreciate you having me on, man.
This was a lot of fun.
Dude, you're one of, like, this kid's one of my best friends, the whole world. Known him for a really long time.
You will be my best man.
And, dude, you're going to be my best man easily, man. Like,
but no, dude, I was really happy I could see you today because we've talked about this for a while.
Yeah.
And we can finally nail this down because you have so much cool information. Like, what other person do you know that got to go to Air Assault and kick ass there? And then do all these, like, really cool, like, advanced camp. And we didn't really go into advanced camp.
Oh, yeah. No, you don't really need to talk about that. It's last summer, Fort Knox. Get in, get out. It was really hot there.
You were gone for, what, a month, I think?
6 weeks or something like that down in Fort Knox.
Oh, man, yeah. All right, Ben, after almost an hour of doing this, all this information was really cool, especially those things for people that are going to be going into either the flying industry or an ROTC coming out of high school. So if they want to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, just hit me up on my Instagram, ben.darkangelo, and I'd be happy to help you guys out with if any of you are high schoolers going into college, trying to go into ROTC. If you just want any questions answered, that was the best way I got my information, so I'd love to be able to help anybody out.
All right. See you guys next week.